And listen to what Chris Matthews has to say, because apparently he thinks that we're more racist as a society today than we were back then. At least maybe back then he has a little bit more respect because we were more overt and honest about our racism. Now we're even more racist, but we just want to lie about it, right? We want to keep it quiet. Here, listen to what he has to say. It's cut number 7.
At least back in 1939, when Marian Anderson had to sing here, "My Country 'Tis of Thee," rather than at the Constitution Hall, because they said the reason was she was black. At least they were honest back then. Today in American politics, you have people like Donald Trump, who hangs around with Mitt Romney, talking about the president being an illegal immigrant, basically being a con artist on a street corner. You've got people talking about nullification of the law of the land. You got people talking impeachment like Coburn. You got Ted Cruz out there. They never say their problem with Obama is that he's black.
That's because that's not their problem. That's why they never say it. The problem with Obama is his policies, not his race. You know, Bill Clinton was impeached, or he wasn't, but I mean they were going to vote to impeach him. He wasn't black, at least. I mean he talked about himself as the first black president, but he really was white, right? So it couldn't have been, the fact that he was black. I mean, Richard Nixon was going to be impeached. But he wasn't black. I mean, everybody criticizes presidents. I mean, we're supposed to have affirmative action when it comes to criticism of presidents. You can only criticize white presidents. You have to just be quiet if the president is black. I mean, that is the racist attitude. It's Chris Matthews is the racist. Now, of course, in this comment, too, what Chris Matthews didn't say about racism in 1939, when he said that at least Americans were honest about their racism. See, he should have expanded on that and said at least Democrats were more honest about their racism. Because the big racists back then were the Southern Democrats. They were the ones that were responsible for segregation. It wasn't the Republicans. The civil rights movement was a Republican movement. Martin Luther King was a Republican. His father was a Republican. The civil rights legislation that they're all talking about was passed over Democratic majority no votes. It was the Republican majority yay votes that are the responsible. Yeah, Lyndon Johnson signed it, but he didn't want to. He held his breath and signed that. He was a racist, but he did it because he wanted the votes. His desire for votes overcame his racism towards blacks. But he didn't make any, he didn't hide that. He was quite honest about his racism. So I guess, Chris Matthews would respect that. That's something that Chris Matthews ought to be a little bit more honest about when he's talking about past discrimination and past racism. Let's identify just who those racists were and who the people were that were trying to end that type of institutionalized racism. Here's some more Chris Matthews, cut number 8.
The pattern is rejection of his legitimacy at the first point, saying he's not really here legally. It's rejection of the law he had passed, the landmark bill passed in 2010. It's an attempt to impeach him on no grounds. At least the Daughters of the American Revolution knew what they're saying, and they said it out loud. He's black. She's black. She can't sing here. These guys today use all the techniques of nullification and talking about illegitimacy and accusing the president of being a crook, basically, for even being president because he's here illegally. And then they talk about impeaching him on grounds they can't even come up with. At least in the old days, they were honest about it. Today, they're not. And that's how rough it's going to be today, I think.
You mean in the old days, the Democrats were honest about their racism, and today the Republicans are dishonest about it. So somehow the Republican Party of Tolerance now has become a party of racists. I just don't buy any of that nonsense. I mean, first of all, to say that nullifying an unconstitutional law is something new, that the only reason people want to nullify Obamacare, which is what he's talking about, his landmark bill in 2010, that is doing so much damage to the economy. It's got nothing to do with the fact that Obama is black. If Obama were white passing the same kind of bill, it would be the same reaction. Remember, the Clintons tried something like this, and it didn't happen. And to say now that because Obama is black, that the critics ought to shut up? They just ought to accept his policies because he's black, right? Again, he wants affirmative action. You can be critical of a white president, but not a black president. A black president, you have to support whatever he says because he's black. Now, again, who's the racist here? It's Chris Matthews, and we're going to play some more of his racist rant after this break, and of course, we'll take your call. We are playing some sound from Chris Matthews, his racist rant from MSNBC yesterday, basically commemorating Martin Luther King, and I guess he's upset that Martin Luther King's dream has turned into a nightmare because we now have more racism, supposedly, I guess. Or we have the same amount, it's just more covert. Americans are just not as honest about their racism as they used to be. But I'm going to continue with this. Here's the next clip. You're not even going to believe this one, so I'm just going to play it, and I'll comment on it after it. But here, cut number 9.
This is an example, and this will sound partisan, to hell with it. The speech to the president gave today is an example of why there's no credibility to his right-wing critics. He is a moderate. He is a pro-American guy, a patriotic guy who preaches over and over again unity among the various groups in this country. He never preaches division. He always preaches progress and getting along together and people taking responsibility for their own lives. Today he sounded a bit like Bill Cosby in that regard. Get your act together. He was pushing that. He is everything a white conservative should applaud.
What? First of all, he's never preaching divisive politics. I mean, the 99%, the 1%, the rich, you didn't build that. I mean, everything he's talking about is division, class warfare. I mean, but listen to his last statement here. He is everything a white conservative should applaud. What? I mean, a white conservative? I mean, so is he saying that this is, if you're a conservative, this is your ideal president? I mean, is that, how preposterous is that? I mean, so maybe, I guess, all the Republicans, all the conservatives should have just voted for Obama as opposed to Mitt Romney. I mean, does he really think that there's no difference whatsoever between a conservative and a liberal? I mean, I agree there's not nearly as much difference as I would like, but there's some difference. Clearly, if you're a conservative, you're not going to support the president. I mean, obviously, Chris Matthews is a liberal Democrat. He would oppose the policies of the conservatives, so why would he assume that conservatives would embrace the policies of his guy, claiming that he's not really a liberal? And even if he's a moderate, which he's not, why would the conservatives want to embrace the moderate? Because they're not moderate, they're conservatives, right? There is some difference, supposedly, in this political spectrum. So for what reason would white conservatives consider him, applauding him, because he's everything that they want? No, he's nothing that they want. Now, I suppose what Matthews thinks is that the conservatives ought to overlook the fact that Obama is nothing like what they want because he is black. And so because he's black and not white, the conservatives should accept him because to reject him makes them a racist. No. It's thinking that conservatives ought to embrace Obama because he's black. That is the racist statement. That is the racist worldview. That's what Chris Matthews thinks, right? He thinks that if somebody is black, they can do no wrong. And if they're doing something wrong, well, it's only because of your perception. You must be a racist if you think. That was the idea behind Trayvon Martin, to think that, well, maybe Trayvon Martin wasn't this innocent black child eating his candy who was gunned down by a raving, a psychopathic racist, right? If you thought, well, maybe Trayvon Martin wasn't the innocent young child, but a teenage thug who attacked somebody and whose actions unfortunately led to his own death. If you raise that, well, you must be a racist. Go back to the Chris Matthews stuff. Here's the next cut. It's cut number 10.
Everything about him. Look how he grew up, how he educated himself, how he always did the right thing and stayed clean as a whistle his whole life and raised this beautiful family and did everything great as a father. Everything that the white conservatives say is perfect. And he's perfect by their standards. And still they trash him as some kind of left-wing socialist who somehow doesn't belong in the presidency. That's the rotten deal he's been thrown at for the last 4.5 years. He is everything the white conservatives should have designed and said our perfect African-American president. That's if they ever wanted there to be a black president of the United States. That's if. And that's what you got to wonder about. What does this guy have to do to win the approval of the right-wing white guy out there?
Chris Matthews.
Is that too strong? I'm sorry. It is.
Chris, thank you very much for your...
You know what he has to do to win the approvals of the conservatives? Become a conservative. If he painted his face white, if he did a Michael Jackson or something and he actually was white, it wouldn't matter. I mean, he basically saying like Barack Obama is what conservatives would create in a lab, right? If you took Barack Obama, his ideas, right, everything he stands for, and just put a white face on the guy, conservatives would just eat it all up. That, conservatives would love Obamacare if only a white guy had passed it or proposed it. But wait a minute, they did oppose it when Clinton, but I guess Clinton wasn't perfect. Because, see, this guy, President Obama, he led a perfect life. Perfect life. He raised perfect children. Yeah, they don't want to walk the dog, but other than that, they're perfect, right? He's got a perfect family. He never made a mistake in his entire life. He's like, a perfect little family. And the conservatives, I mean, everything would be so great. I mean, it's like they've got everything they want in a president. God damn it, he just happened to be black. Crap. I mean, he's everything we want. I mean, he might as well have run on the Republican line as well as the Democratic line. I mean, this guy is fantastic. He's got it all. Too bad he's black. Damn it. God, what am I going to do? We got to get rid of him. I want to get a white guy in there who I don't like. I'd rather have a white guy in office where I disagree with everything he says, because at least he's white. Because that's all that matters to the white conservatives is whiteness. Nothing else matters. Their ideology, what they believe in, what they stand for. He says President Obama is not some kind of left-wing socialist, which I guess left-wing socialist is kind of redundant, right? Because, it's the same thing. But he's not some kind of left-wing socialist. He is a left-wing socialist. He is the embodiment of that. That's what he believes in. Listen to his speeches. Listen to the things that he says. What he believes is the antithesis of what the founding fathers believed, what the people that are in the Tea Party movement or what a lot of right-wing conservatives believe. It would be racist of conservatives to embrace Obama, despite the fact that they disagree with everything he stands for, simply because he is black. You see, it's the white conservatives that are being honest. They are treating President Obama the same way they would treat him if he were white. Right? They're the ones that are not being racists. They are not holding back their criticism because the person they're criticizing is black. They are showing Obama respect in criticizing him when they disagree with him. It would be disrespectful, it would be racist to withhold that criticism simply because he was black and give him a pass and just keep their criticism to themselves. The racist in this situation is Chris Matthews, who expects all of the Republicans to embrace a man they philosophically oppose, but because he's black. Now, for all we know, maybe Chris Matthews has some problems with President Obama, but he feels he can't voice it. He has to say that everything about President Obama is perfect. He's not mere mortal like everybody else. He's perfection personified because he can't say one negative thing about the man because he's black. What kind of double standard is that, right? That is what racism is all about, a double standard, right? One standard for whites and another standard for blacks. You know who has that? It's Chris Matthews. He's the racist, not those Republican conservatives that he is labeling as racist. 855